Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video because it is going to be my Sephora VIB sale haul follow-up where I talk to you guys about my thoughts on the products that I picked up during the most recent Sephora VIB sale, letting you know what I think about all of the products, if I like them, don't like them, am I returning anything, just my overall thoughts. I do have a couple of items that were repeat purchases, but other than that, everything else was brand new. If you guys missed my original haul, I'll leave that link down below or up in the cards in case you're interested in checking that out. But if you're interested in hearing my thoughts on some of the new products that I have picked up and added to my collection, then stay tuned. But first, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope you'll consider doing so before you go. I post videos every single Monday, Thursday, Friday for sure. And I'm going back and forth on whether or not I want to switch my fourth upload day from Tuesday to Wednesday, or I may just kind of flip-flop back in between the two of them, because sometimes Tuesday works and sometimes it doesn't. Regardless, I do try and post at least 4 videos a week. I've been trying to consistently post every Sunday as well, so 5 days a week. Usually Sundays I do a shop my stash, or I recently started a series called 7 for 7 where I choose 7 products to focus on for 7 days. But yeah, that's kind of my filming schedule and where we're at with that. If you like this video, I hope you'll consider subscribing if you are not yet subscribed. But other than that, let's just jump into my thoughts on the products I picked up during the Sephora VIB sale. Okay, so I want to start with my 3 repurchase items. First, I have the Drunk Elephant Slay Makeup Melting Butter Cleanser. I had picked this up during the April Sephora VIB sale because I do really like a first step makeup melter in my skincare routine. I really liked the Clinique Take the Day Off. I've used the Burt's Bees cleansing oil, which I also really like, but I feel like I reach a point where I will rebuy whatever melting product I use, and then as I go through the second bottle, I'm just not as into it. So I went through a full size of the Drunk Elephant makeup melter, and I've really been enjoying this second jar too. I feel like this might be just like my solid go-to makeup melting cleanser, unless you guys have other ones that you want me to review, or if something launches that just really excites me. But I really do like this. I believe that this retails for $34. I will have everything linked down below in my description box with the price, but I believe this is $34, so it is relatively expensive. But it took me a solid 3 to 4 months to go through one. This is where I'm at now, and I've been using this for the last 6 weeks or so. So I do feel it lasts a decent amount of time. It's a really nice product. It comes with a little scoop, so you can scoop it out rather than putting your hands into the product. And then I just put it onto my face, obviously, and I use it to melt away my makeup. I feel like it does a really nice job of melting everything away. Liquid lipsticks, waterproof mascara. I do feel like it does a really nice job of melting all my makeup, and it's a really great first step to my makeup cleanse, if you will. So if you have been thinking about this, or if you're looking for a new makeup melter, I highly recommend the one from Drunk Elephant. And then this, I had gone through the deluxe size sample that we got in the Sephora VIB birthday gift, and I really enjoyed it, and my husband also really enjoyed it. He has relatively sensitive skin, so he has to be very careful about the cleansers that he's using, but he's getting more and more into skincare because he does struggle some with acne, and he wants to wash his face more. He wants to clear his acne up, which I'm all about, my husband being into skincare, because it means more skincare for me. So we did go ahead and purchase a full size of the Drunk Elephant Bestie No. 9 Jelly Cleanser. This is a cleanser I feel like I can use either in the morning or at night. It's gentle enough for me to use in the morning, but it also suds up enough that I feel like I can use it at night when I'm really trying to remove my makeup. So I really do enjoy this cleanser. I feel like this is one that will stick around in my collection for quite some time. I am pretty picky about my cleansers. I have my favorites that I always go to, and this has quickly become one of those favorites. And then the last item that was a repurchase was the First Aid Beauty Coconut Skin Smoothing Priming Moisturizer. I've been raving about this being my favorite primer ever on my channel all year, but I haven't had it in my collection, so it was time to repurchase. I absolutely love this. If you are looking for a really nice hydrating primer that also has a hint of illumination without looking too artificial, I would highly recommend this one from First Aid Beauty. Plus it's only $28, which I feel like is a really fair price for kind of like those high-end brands. Like, you can end up paying like mid $30 to $40 for a lot of these high-end primers, so I feel like this is a really good price. I also really like the smoothing one. I haven't tried the hyaluronic acid one yet, but I am just a really big fan of the First Aid Beauty primers in general, so definitely recommend these. So then we'll jump into the rest of the products that were new to my collection, starting with this primer. This is from Kaja Beauty. It is actually in an aerosol can, which I should have known when I purchased this, but aerosol cans are bad for the environment, so I may have rethought that purchase. But this is their Dream Puff Radiant Mousse Primer. I really have heard a lot of good things about the one that comes in an aerosol can from Origins, but I can't seem to find that anywhere. Maybe it's just me. So I really wanted to try one of these type of primers, and I also really want to, or I'm interested in trying more from Kaja, so that's why I decided to pick this up. I don't know if I said this is the Dream Puff Radiant Mousse Primer. So I've been using this really consistently over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and I've got a couple thoughts on this. So up first, my first thought is, so you shake it up, and even just a light, really light tap on this, let me show you how much comes out. Quite a bit. Like, that's a lot, and that was just like a really light pump. So I thought that this was also going to be a lot thicker than it is, but it actually is like very airy, and it like dissipates really quickly, and then obviously you just rub it in. I don't feel like this has any sort of tack to it, so it's definitely not like a gripping primer at all, but this is so radiant. I don't know if you'll be able to tell a difference between this hand and this hand, but this is so radiant. And in fact, oftentimes when I put this on my skin, it almost looks just like a veil of shimmer. So not necessarily something that I look for in a primer. Like, I feel like it's almost too illuminating and it just looks very artificial. This I think would be beautiful in the summertime to like rub all over your arms and shoulders, even your legs, to give you a really beautiful shimmer, almost like a body oil, but a shimmer. Like, it's just so shimmery. So I am stopping use on this until the summertime next year, or even maybe spring, when I feel like this just kind of fits the aesthetic or the vibe that I'm trying to fulfill in those months. But as far as fall and winter, I just feel like this isn't a primer that I'm going to be reaching for. Again, I think it's really pretty, and I just feel like this is more suited towards almost like an all over body shimmer, not a face primer. Maybe you could use this like if you weren't going in with foundation, or if you were going in with a really light tinted moisturizer, you could use this to give your face a very glowy effect to the skin. But again, sometimes I feel like it catches the light right, and I feel like there's almost like really finely milled micro glitter in there, and it can just look a little bit shimmery. So not my favorite primer, probably not one that I will repurchase when I finish this. This isn't something that I'll declutter or return, but I am excited to try this as an all over body shimmer later when it makes more sense. So next summer, we'll see. And maybe if I love it that way, then I will repurchase, but as of right now, for a face primer, not my jam. I forgot to mention, I'm currently in the process of self-tanning, so I have like Color Garden stuff on, so if I don't match, that's why. And I also feel like my neck just looks super splotchy just because of the Color Guard situation, so do apologize for that. But if I'm looking a little janky, that's why. I picked up one other skincare item, and it was the Ole Henriksen Fat Glow Facial. So this is part of their, I think like their retinol line. It has like the white and like blue packaging. So I am a huge fan of the retinol night cream as well as the morning serum. I love that line and will continue to repurchase that over and over again. So I was really interested to try the Glow Facial that they recently released, and I have really been enjoying this. I think I've used this 4 times now. I use it once a week. I could use it twice a week, but I just have like my skincare systems and my specific masks that I use on specific days. And this is my Sunday mask, and my Sunday mask only at the current moment. This seriously makes your skin glow. Even when I rinse this off, my skin just has this beautiful glowy, like healthy glow to the skin, and I love it. So essentially you pump this onto your face. I did a full pump. I should have just done like a half pump, but this is a full pump, and a full pump covers my whole face. I don't have to do 2 pumps, and it comes out in this like sticky pink goo, and then you rub it in until it turns white. So it turns from pink to white, and then you leave it on for like 15 to 20 minutes and you wash it off and your skin is just glowing. It's beaming. I love it. This has PHAs in it and Nordic birch sap, and I just love the effect that it gives to the skin. I have been a huge fan of this. It says to use 2 times per week, day or night, and it can be used before makeup application, but I typically just like to use this once I'm done wearing makeup for the day. Leave on for 15 minutes, like I said, and they wipe off with a damp cloth. Highly recommend checking this out. I believe this retails for $49. You do get a decent amount of product in here. You get 1.7 fluid ounces, and like I said, you really only need 1 pump to cover your whole face. So I feel like this is going to last me a very long time, and this is one that I do anticipate I will repurchase when I finish it. I haven't had any sort of skin irritation or anything like that, no breakouts from this, so definitely recommend this one from Ulla Henriksen. Next up, I picked up from Milk their Blur Powder, and I picked mine up in the shade Translucent Light. And I've gone back and forth on this powder and back and forth, and this is what I'll say. I like it some days, and other days I feel like it clings to certain foundations or certain concealers in a way where it's like, if I'm only setting my concealer, I can tell, like I can see where the powder ends almost on my face, which I don't love. So sometimes I really struggle to blend this out to make it look flawless. If I'm using this all over my face, I do really like it, and I think it does a really nice job of blurring and smoothing the skin to give you kind of like that airbrushed feel. But I do feel like it can end up looking a little bit heavy on the skin as well, even set with like sprays, etc. So it's not something I want to return, and I do think I'll be able to finish this up eventually. You get a lot of product in this. Another thing that I didn't love was the like net that was inside. I felt like it was really hard to get product out, so I ended up just cutting mine, and that's how I use mine. I have used this very consistently over the course of the last 4 weeks, and I'm just so on it. Once I finish this, I won't repurchase. I prefer the Hourglass powder to this one, but I'm really glad that I got to try this out. I think my favorite way to use it typically is just to set underneath my eyes, as long as I'm using the right concealer. For some reason, I just have concealers that it just clings awkwardly to, and it's not that flattering. I don't feel like I would necessarily recommend this. Maybe if you had more oily skin, I feel like this would be better for you, but it could be dry patches that it's clinging to for me as well, and I don't feel like this is the most flattering powder for my skin. I prefer this over like the Laura Mercier No Translucent powder, but if I had to choose between this and the Hourglass powder, I would choose the Hourglass. I'm always looking for recommendations of new powders to try, both pressed powders as well as loose powders like this. So if you guys have any other recommendations on powders that you love, I would love to hear from you. So far, I really just have my Hourglass. That's my holy grail. I also really like the RCMA powder, but other than that, I'm not really sold on any powder. But I haven't tried a ton of powders just because I am so dry. I have recently gotten in to using powders more often, but it's just not a product that I've always been like super committed to. So if you guys have any great powder recommendations, I would love to hear them down below. Okay, and then we're gonna wrap it up with the foundations as well as the palettes that I purchased. So I purchased 3 foundations during the VIB sale. I picked up the new Fenty Beauty Pro Filter Hydrating Longwear Foundation. I am going to be doing a foundation review video of the 5 foundations that I've most recently picked up, where I will kind of talk about my thoughts more in depth on each of these. But I do want to give some thoughts on this in case you are wondering if you should pick this up for yourself. So for the Fenty Beauty one, I know a lot of people have been raving about this, and I do like this foundation, but I think it's almost a little bit too luminous for my liking, because I do get settling in my forehead lines, around my mouth, and then it can look a little bit heavy like in my, like around my nose area right here. I most prefer this with the First Aid Beauty smoothing primer, just because I feel like it does a nice job of like smoothing this area specifically, and then I can blend it out not to look so heavy around the nose area. I feel like if I use an illuminating primer, it almost just looks too dewy and too illuminating for my liking. I could see, if you have dry skin, why people would like this foundation. So I have mine in the shade 150, which is probably the right shade for me when I'm not self-tanned. I had originally picked up 120, which was way too light for me. I do love that this comes in, I believe, 50 different shades, and I feel like the price is pretty fair on this. I think it's like $35 or $36. So if you have dry skin, I mean, I would definitely recommend even getting a sample to test out. Do I think that this is my favorite foundation ever? Absolutely not. I definitely have favorites that I prefer over this, and I probably, at least at this point, don't see myself picking this up once I finish this. I don't think it'll be a problem for me to eventually finish this foundation. It just is like more of a foundation that I like, not one that I love. And as I work through my foundations, I only want to keep foundations in my collection that I'm either testing out or foundations that I absolutely am in love with. And for me right now, this is just a foundation that I like. So then we have the Wander Beauty Nude Illusion Liquid Foundation, and for this ended up being a little bit more mattifying than I was expecting. I thought that this was going to be, again, a little bit more illuminating, but I would say it's almost like a satin matte finish. Not totally matte by any means, but more matte than I was expecting. This does have the doe foot applicator, which is not my favorite, I will say right off the bat. And what I will say is when I use this, I feel like I have to work in sections of my face, because if I just kind of like make marks all over my face and then go into either blend it out with a brush or a sponge, it's already like starting to dry down. So I work in sections of my face with this, which I was just a little bit surprised by. I don't know what I was expecting. I just know that I was expecting, maybe I felt like illusion. In my mind, I was thinking illumination, but this, of the three that I picked up, is definitely the most matte of each. I do really like this one, and I think even for a matte foundation, it doesn't look very heavy on the skin. This is one I would feel comfortable wearing to work. It is kind of like a medium coverage, like light to medium coverage foundation. I haven't really tried to build it beyond that, just out of fear that it might look a little bit too heavy. So I like this. I was expecting to love this just because I've heard Kathleen Lights and Samantha March really rave about this, and I feel like maybe my expectations were just a little bit too high. This is another one where it's like, I like, maybe this one I could see through more use becoming more of a favorite, just because I feel like it's one that's a little bit more long lasting. It's still more of a comfort matte or a satin matte, so it's not completely matte. It doesn't make me look flat. But right now, this is just a like. I'm not sure that this is one that I would repurchase either. And then finally, I also picked up the new foundation from ABH. I forgot to mention, I picked up the Wander Beauty one in Fair Light, which I feel like is a decent shade match for me when I'm at my absolute fairest. This is a little bit too dark, but if I'm self-tanned, I feel like this works really well for me. So then, like I was saying, I also picked up the new ABH foundation. I picked mine up in the shade 150W, which I actually feel like is a really good shade match for me. Kind of when I'm in between like my fairest and a little bit of self-tan, like maybe when I'm getting towards the end of my self-tan. This is one, so I went in store and swatched a bunch of the different shades just because I had been hearing that people were really struggling to find the right shade match for me. So I would highly recommend going in store to shade match, because I swatched so many and it took me forever to decide on which shade I was going to pick up. So obviously I picked up 150W, and I feel like this works really well for me. And of the three, this is currently my favorite of the three that I picked up during the Sephora VIB sale. I think this gives a beautiful luminosity to the skin. It doesn't have the longest wear time, but I do feel like it wears away sort of gracefully, where sometimes you can like, it's like completely worn away like on your nose, but you have foundation like on the outer perimeter of your face and it looks ridiculous. This wears away very gracefully, which I appreciate. I do prefer to set this one with a powder, especially if I'm wearing this to work. I prefer to set it with a powder. I do prefer to set the Fenty with a powder as well. But if I'm choosing between the Fenty and the ABH, I would go ABH over Fenty Beauty for me personally. I really do love this. I think it is beautiful. If you guys have been thinking about this, I would definitely recommend checking out, especially if you have like normal to dry skin. If you have oily skin, I'm not so sure that this one would work for you, but I personally have really been enjoying it. Alright guys, and then to wrap it up, I have 3 palettes that I picked up during the sale. The first is the Mini Nude Palette by Natasha Denona. This is what this looks like. I've gotten quite a bit of use out of this. This is a really easy one for me to use for days that I work, just because it's so easy, so simple, kind of so laid out. This would be a good one to travel with if you are just needing neutral looks. I love the shade Sienna right here. Let me swatch it for you guys. It is beautiful. A beautiful like duochrome shade. I absolutely love this. I like this palette. I think I've heard that of all of the mini palettes from Natasha Denona, this is the one that's most true to her real formula, like in her larger palettes. And I will say this one is much better in quality than the mini star palette, which is the only other mini that I own from her. I would recommend, if you want to try out something from Natasha Denona, it's nice that it's that $25 price point. Even though the pans are small, like this is a very mini palette. If you haven't seen these in person, it's very mini, but I do feel like you still get a lot of product. You're going to be able to use this for a while, and if you just need neutral looks from day to day, I would recommend this palette. So then I also picked up the Rustic Glam palette from Dominique Cosmetics, and I have been playing around with this quite a bit. I think I have used every single shade except for this shade right here, which is the shade Gypsy, which I know is a very offensive word in certain areas of the world, so I don't even like to say that word. My apologies, but that is the name of the shade. My thoughts on this palette: there are some shades that I really love, and there are also some shades that I don't really love. I would say that this shade right here ended up being less pigmented than I imagined. It's very, very light. Even on my fair skin, it's very, very light, like a super light transition shade. I think the blues actually perform very similarly to one another when actually on the eyes. So you have this matte blue right here, and then you also have this shimmery blue right here, but the shimmery blue can end up looking more matte or like satin matte on the eyes. I do find this one to be a little bit hard to work with and hard to blend out. This one I have had no problems with. My favorite shade in the palette is obviously this one right here, which is in the shade Wanderlust. It's this beautiful greeny gold shade, which has just been like my perfect favorite shade this year. So I love this palette even just for that shade. I do think basically this bottom row, these four, I love. And even this, like using this transition and then this chocolate brown to like deepen it up, I really like. I think the gold in here is very beautiful. The orange is super pigmented. I really like this. I would say this Moonchild shade is just, I definitely could have left that out of the palette, as well as again Dreamcatcher. Wildflower I have found a little bit hard to blend. I think it can blend a little bit patchy. I think it's not as pigmented again as I expected, and I was just a little bit let down by that shade as well. This Cactus shade, it takes a little bit of building up, but I do really like this shade as well. I actually created a look from this palette that I was wearing in my roulette pan collab video. It was like a very blue-green look, kind of like today's. Definitely way outside my comfort zone, as is today. We'll see how we end up looking when we are editing. Today I used the Nabla Secret palette, and I had some fun playing around with shades that I normally wouldn't have. Regardless, I think I would probably pick up the Latte palette from Dominique Cosmetics over this one, unless any of these colors are just really screaming out to you. I would just say it's kind of like a hit and miss palette. I'm happy that I have it in my collection again for this bottom row and even this transition shade. I'm excited to try this shimmery purple and see what I think, but I think for the most part, most people probably don't need this in their collection, and I would go with the Latte palette over this if you're trying to decide. I haven't tried the Latte palette, but I just hear so many good things about it. I really want to get the Latte palette, but I'm happy to have a Dominique Cosmetics palette in my collection, but I just think this one was so-so. Had some really good shades, had some letdown shades. It was just okay. And then finally, I also picked up the Jackie Aina palette, and you guys, I have been absolutely loving this palette. I think it is beautiful. I love so many of the shades in here. I think this is just such a fun, beautiful palette. I love everything about this. I love that you can do pinky looks, red looks, green looks, neutral looks. I just think that this was so brilliantly put together, and I feel so inspired every time I look into this palette. And even me, who struggles to put looks together, and usually I'm like, oh, like can I even use this shade with this shade? I look into this and I like really want to experiment and have fun with this palette, which is saying a lot. So this might be my second favorite to Soft Glam, and the only reason Soft Glam would be over this is just because it's such an easy, I don't even have to think about it palette. But I am really loving the Jackie Aina palette and would highly recommend scooping this up before it is gone. This is a limited edition palette. Love it so much. After that though, you guys, that concludes my Sephora VIB sale haul follow up. Let me know what you guys picked up during the sale and what you're thinking of the items that you picked up. What are your thoughts? Is there anything you would recommend? I would love to hear from you guys. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to watch this video, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye.